Jake Morrison sat in the pilot's seat of his old cargo ship, watching the stars pass by through the front window. He was just a regular guy doing a regular job, moving supplies from one planet to another. His brown hair was messy from the long flight, and his blue eyes were tired. He had been flying for 3 days straight to reach the human colony on Kepler 442b. The cargo hold was full of medicine, food, and tools that the colonists needed. Jake had done this run many times before. It was boring work, but it paid well. Enough to keep him fed and his ship running. He never looked for trouble, and trouble had never found him until today. The ship's alarm started beeping loudly. Jake looked at his screen and saw 3 large ships coming toward him fast. They were much bigger than his little cargo ship, and they had weapons. Jake's heart began to beat faster. He had never seen ships like these before. "This is Commander Vexter of the Zephyrian Empire," a cold voice said through the radio. "Human vessel, you will stop your engines and prepare to be boarded." Jake had heard stories about the Zephyrians. They were tall, reptile-like aliens with scales instead of skin. They thought they were better than everyone else in the galaxy. Most humans tried to avoid them, but Jake had never met one before. "I'm just carrying supplies," Jake said into his radio. "I'm not bothering anyone." "You are in Zephyrian space without permission," the voice replied. "That is a crime." Jake looked at his star map. He was nowhere near Zephyrian space, at least not according to his charts. But arguing with 3 warships was not a good idea. His little cargo ship had no weapons and couldn't outrun the alien ships. "Okay," Jake said. "I'll shut down my engines." Minutes later, Jake felt his ship shake as the Zephyrians attached their boarding tube to his airlock. The door opened with a hiss, and 3 tall aliens walked in. They were even scarier than the story said. Their yellow eyes looked at Jake like he was a bug. Their long claws clicked on the metal floor. Commander Vexter was the tallest of the 3. His scales were dark green, and he wore a black uniform with gold symbols on it. He looked around Jake's small ship with disgust. "So this is what humans call a starship," Vexter said with a laugh. "It looks like a garbage can with engines." The other 2 aliens laughed too. Jake stayed quiet. He had learned long ago that it was better to keep his mouth shut when people were trying to pick a fight. "What is your name, human?" Vexter asked. "Jake Morrison," Jake replied. "Well, Jake Morrison, you have caused us a great deal of trouble. We had to stop our important work to deal with you. Do you know what we do to creatures who waste our time?" Jake shook his head. He had a feeling he didn't want to know. "We make examples of them," Vexter said with a mean smile. "Take him to the station. Put him in the dragon pit." The other 2 aliens grabbed Jake's arms. They were much stronger than him, and their claws hurt his skin. Jake didn't fight back. He knew it would only make things worse. They dragged him through the boarding tube into their ship. The inside was all metal and cold lights. Everything was too big for humans. Jake had to take 2 steps for every one of theirs. The trip to their space station took an hour. Jake spent the time in a small cell, thinking about what the alien had. Sighed. Dragon pit. That didn't sound good. The Zephyrian station was huge. It looked like a giant metal spider floating in space. Jake could see weapon ports and landing bays all over it. This was clearly a military base, not a trading post. Inside the station, the aliens marched Jake through long hallways. Other Zephyrians stopped to stare at him. Some pointed and laughed. Others just looked at him with those cold yellow eyes. They finally stopped at a large door marked with alien symbols. Above it was a window where other aliens could look down into the room below. Jake could see that many Zephyrians were already gathering to watch. "Welcome to the dragon pit," Vexter said. "This is where we keep our pets. They haven't been fed in 3 days. I think they will be very happy to see you." Jake looked through the window. The room below was huge, with high walls and a metal floor. In the shadows, he could see large shapes moving. Whatever was down, there was big. "Any last words, human?" Vexter asked. Jake looked at the alien commander. "Yeah, this seems like a lot of trouble for a parking ticket." Vexthera's eyes got angry. "Throw him in." The floor opened under Jake's feet. He fell through the air and landed hard on the metal floor of the pit. Pain shot through his back and legs. He rolled over and slowly stood up, looking around at his new prison. The room was bigger than it had looked from above. The walls were too high to climb, and the only light came from glowing strips on the ceiling. Jake could hear the aliens above him talking and laughing. Then he heard something else. A low growling sound coming from the shadows. Jake turned toward the sound and saw 3 pairs of glowing red eyes staring at him from the darkness. The dragons were real, and they were hungry. The 3 creatures stepped out of the shadows slowly. Jake had never seen anything like them before. They were not exactly dragons like in old Earth stories, but they were close enough. Each one was as big as a small truck, with thick scales. That looked like armor. Their claws were as long as kitchen knives, and their teeth were even longer. The biggest one had scars all over its body, old wounds that had healed but left marks. Its left eye was cloudy, probably blind. But it's right. I stared at Jake with intelligence. This was not just a dumb animal dot above them. Jake could hear the Zephyrians making bets. They were gambling on how long he would live. Most of them said less than 5 minutes. A few said he might last 10 minutes if he ran fast. The scarred dragon took another step forward. Its mouth opened slightly, showing rows of sharp teeth. Jake could feel its hot breath on his face. The other 2 dragons moved to his left and right, surrounding him. Jake did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He sat down on the floor. "Hello," he said quietly. The dragons stopped moving. The big one tilted its head, like a dog that had heard a strange sound. Above them, the Zephyrians stopped talking. Jake looked up at the scarred dragon. For some reason, words came to his mind. Old words that he had never learned, but somehow new. Kairos Nethic Vasti, Jake said in a language that sounded like rocks grinding together. The dragon's eyes went wide. It took a step back, making a surprised sound. The other 2 dragons looked at each other, then at Jake. "What did the human just say?" one of the Zephyrians asked above them. "I don't know," Commander Vexter replied. "It sounded like the old tongue, but that's impossible. Humans don't know our ancient languages." Jake stood up slowly. He walked toward the big dragon, holding out his hand. Every instinct told him to run, but something deeper told him to stay calm. "Kairos," Jake said softly. "That's your name, isn't it?" The dragon stared at him for a long moment. Then it did something that made the watching aliens gasp. It lowered its massive head and let Jake touch its snout. Jake's hand felt the warm, rough scales. The dragon's skin was tough, but not unpleasant. He could feel the creature's heartbeat through his palm. It was fast, but not angry. It was curious. "You're not just animals," Jake said. "You're people. You have names and thoughts and feelings." The dragon Jake had called Kairos made a deep rumbling sound. Not a growl of anger, but something like a purr. The other 2 dragons came closer. Jake could sense that they were not threatening him anymore. "The female is Naya," Jake said, looking at the smaller dragon with blue-green scales. "And you," he said to the 3rd dragon, "are Theron." The dragons all made that purring sound. Above them, the Zephyrians were talking louder now. They were confused and angry. "This is impossible," Vexter said. "Those creatures are savage beasts. They have killed dozens of prisoners. Maybe Human is using some kind of trick, another alien suggested. What kind of trick makes a Drakmor act like a pet? Vexther snapped back. Jake spent the next hour getting to know his new cellmates. The dragons were curious about him. They sniffed him carefully, learning his scent. Naya was the most friendly, while Theron was cautious, but not hostile. Jake found that he could understand some of their sounds. When Kairos made a low whistle, he was asking a question. When Naya clicked her tongue, she was showing approval. When Theron hissed softly, he was warning about something. As the day went on, Jake learned more about the dragons. They were called Drakmors, and they were very old, much older than the Zephyrian Empire. They had once been free, flying between the stars. But now they were prisoners, just like Jake. The Zephyrians had captured them years ago and used them for fighting. They made the Drakmors fight each other and fight other prisoners for entertainment. Any Drakmor that refused to fight was punished by not being fed. "That's why you're so thin," Jake said to Kairos, seeing the dragon's ribs showing through his. "Scales. They don't feed you enough." Jake opened his jacket and pulled out a protein bar from his pocket. It was all the food he had, but he broke it into 3 pieces and gave one to each dragon. They ate carefully, making grateful sounds. That night, Jake slept on the cold metal floor. But he was not alone. The 3 Drakmors lay down around him, sharing their body heat. Their warm scales kept him from freezing. The next morning, Commander Vexther came to look down at them. His face was angry. "I don't understand what you did to them, human," he said, "but it won't save you. I'm going to make this more interesting." Vexther pressed some buttons on a control panel. The walls of the pit started to change. Spikes came out of the floor. The ceiling began to lower. Blades swung down from above. It was a death trap, designed to kill anything in the pit. But Jake was not alone. Kairos grabbed Jake in his claws and jumped over the spikes. Naya used her tail to stop the blades. Theron breathed fire at the ceiling, melting the metal that was trying to crush them. Working together, Jake and the 3 Drakmors survived every trap that Vexther activated. The watching aliens couldn't believe what they were seeing. The human and the dragons were not just surviving. They were helping each other. "Impossible," Vexther whispered. "The Drakmors never work together. They're too stupid to cooperate." But Jake knew better. The dragons were not stupid at all. They were smart, brave, and loyal. They had just been treated so badly that they had forgotten how to trust. Now they remembered. Word spread quickly through the Zephyrian station about the human who could talk to dragons. Other prisoners whispered about Jake Morrison in the dark corners of their cells. Some said he was magic. Others said he was crazy. But they all agreed on one thing: he was different. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was one of the few aliens on the station who was not Zephyrian. She was human, but she worked for the aliens as a scientist. She studied different species and how they behaved. The Zephyrians kept her around because she was useful, but they didn't treat her well. Elena had been watching Jake through the security cameras. She saw things that the Zephyrians missed. The way Jake moved his hands when he talked to the dragons. The way his eyes changed color in certain light. The way he seemed to know things he shouldn't know. "This is very strange," Elena said to herself as she watched the recordings. "Humans don't speak the old dragon language. We don't even know it exists." She decided to run some tests. Elena was supposed to study the dragons, not the human, but she was curious. She used the station's medical scanners to look at Jake from far away. What she found made her hands shake. Jake's blood was different. His DNA had parts that shouldn't exist. It was like someone had mixed human genes with something else. Something very old and very powerful. Meanwhile, in the dragon pit, Jake was learning more about his new friends. The dragons could talk to him without making sounds. They put pictures and feelings directly into his mind. This was how Jake learned the real story. Long ago, the dragons had been the guardians of a great civilization. They were not pets or monsters. They were respected partners who helped protect planets and star systems. But that civilization had disappeared, and the dragons had been left alone. What happened to your people? Jake asked Kairos. The big dragon showed him pictures in his mind. Jake saw a beautiful city floating in space. He saw beings of light who looked almost human, but were taller and more graceful. They had built wonderful things and helped other species learn and grow. The architects, Jake whispered. The word came from somewhere deep in his memory. They were called the architects. Kairos purred and touched Jake's shoulder with his snout. Yes, the dragon seemed to say. You remember, but Jake didn't remember. At least, not much. Sometimes he would know things without knowing how he knew them. Sometimes he would speak words and languages he had never learned. Sometimes he would look at the stars and feel like he was looking at old friends. Why do I know these things? Jake asked the dragons. Naya showed him a picture of a baby being hidden away. The baby looked human, but there was something different about its eyes. They glowed with a soft light. That's me, Jake said. Isn't it? Theron made a sound that meant yes. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was having the same thoughts. She had been studying Jake's DNA for 3 days now. Every test she ran showed the same impossible results. Jake Morrison was not completely human. I need to talk to him, Elena said to herself. But how? Elena knew that Commander Vexter would never let her into the dragon pit. The Zephyrian. Commander was getting more angry every day. He had tried everything to kill Jake and the dragons, but they kept surviving. The other aliens on the station were starting to talk. Some were saying that maybe the dragons were not as savage as everyone thought. This made Vexter furious. The dragons were supposed to be proof of Zephyrian power. They were supposed to be unbeatable killers that only the Zephyrians could control. But now a human was making them look gentle. I want that human dead, Vexter told his officers. I don't care how you do it. Sir, the other prisoners are watching, one officer said. If we kill him now, they might think we're afraid of him. I'm not afraid of a human. Vexter roared. I'm tired of his tricks. But Elena had a plan. She waited until the night shift, when fewer guards were around. Then she used her security codes to get into the lower levels of the station. She found a maintenance tunnel that led to the dragon pit. Jake was sitting with his back against Kairos when Elena crawled out of the tunnel. The dragons immediately stood up and moved between her and Jake, ready to protect him. Wait, Jake said to the dragons. She's not here to hurt us. Elena looked at Jake with wide eyes. How did you know I was coming? I felt you, Jake said. I've been feeling a lot of things lately, things I don't understand. Elena pulled out a small device that looked like a tablet. On the screen were pictures of Jake's DNA. I've been studying you, she said. You're not entirely human, are you? Jake looked at the pictures. He couldn't read the scientific data, but he could feel that it was important. I don't know what I am, Jake said. I remember being born on Earth. I remember growing up like a normal kid, but lately I've been remembering other things. Things that feel like dreams, but they're too real to be dreams. Elena showed him more pictures. These were from old books and computer files. They showed the same floating cities that Kairos had put in Jake's mind. The architects, Elena said, they were real. They lived millions of years ago. They helped create life on thousands of worlds. But then they disappeared. No one knows why. They didn't disappear, Jake said quietly. They hid. What do you mean? Jake looked at the 3 dragons. They were listening to every word, and their eyes were bright with hope. They knew something bad was coming, Jake said. So they hid themselves among the younger species. They changed their appearance and locked away their memories. They became human and Zephyrian and 100 other species. They've been waiting. Waiting for what? Elena asked Dot before Jake could answer. Alarms started going off all over the station. Red lights flashed, and a voice spoke over the intercom. Security. Breach in Section 7. All guards to Section 7. Alana's face went pale. They know I'm here. Heavy footsteps echoed in the tunnels. Guards were coming, and they sounded angry. You have to go, Jake said. Come with me, Elena said. I can get you out of here. Jake looked at the dragons. They had been prisoners for so long. He couldn't leave them behind. No, Jake said. I'm staying with my friends. The footsteps were getting closer. Elena put her hand on Jake's shoulder. Then, I'm staying too, she said, because I think you're about to remember who you really are. The guards found them just as Jake's eyes began to glow with a soft, golden light. The guards burst into the dragon pit with their weapons ready. Commander Vexter was with them, his yellow eyes burning with anger. He looked at Elena and Jake standing together near the dragons. Dr. Rodriguez, Vexter said coldly, you have disappointed me. I thought humans were smarter than this. I'm smarter than you think, Elena replied. Smart enough to know that you're about to make a huge mistake. Jake stood up slowly. The golden light in his eyes was getting brighter. The dragons moved closer to him, making protective sounds. But Jake held up his hand, telling them to wait. Commander, Jake said, his voice sounding different than before. You should leave now. Vexter laughed. You think you can threaten me, human? I have 20 guards with plasma rifles. You have 3 tired dragons and a traitor scientist. I have something else, Jake said. The walls of the station began to hum. It was a low sound, almost too quiet to hear. But everyone could feel it in their bones. The metal floor started to vibrate under their feet. What is that? One of the guards asked, looking around nervously. The station is waking up, Jake said. His hair was starting to float as if he was underwater. The golden light around him was getting stronger. Elena pulled out her scanner and pointed it at Jake. The readings were going crazy. Energy levels that shouldn't be possible. DNA patterns that were changing before her eyes. My God, Elena whispered. You're not just part architect. You're a full architect. Your human appearance was just a disguise. Jake nodded. I'm starting to remember. My name isn't really Jake Morrison. That was just the identity I was given when I was hidden on Earth. My real name is. He paused, searching his awakening memory. My real name is Zarek High, Guardian of the 7th Sector. The station shook. Ancient systems that had been sleeping for millions of years began to activate. Lights that had never been turned on started to glow in the walls. Impossible, Vexter snarled. The architects are myths. Stories told to children. The architects built this station, Jake said. They built most of the stations in this part of the galaxy, including this one. The Zephyrians found it empty and decided to live in it, but they never owned it. Jake raised his hand, and the station's defense systems came online. The guards' weapons suddenly stopped working. Their plasma rifles went dead in their hands. You see, Jake continued, architect technology only works for architects, or for people the architects allow to use it. Vexter pulled out a backup weapon, but it also went dead when he tried to fire it. This is impossible, he said. Humans are primitive. They can barely build ships that don't fall apart. I'm not human, Jake said. I never was. I was just wearing a human shape to hide among them. The disguise was falling away now. Jake was getting taller. His skin was beginning to glow with soft light. His eyes were changing from blue to gold to silver. He still looked mostly human, but now he looked like what humans might become if they grew for 1,000,000 more years. The dragons were making happy sounds. They had known all along what Jake really was. That's why they had trusted him so quickly. The Drakmors were our partners, Jake said, putting his hand on Kairos's head. They helped us protect the galaxy. They're not pets or monsters. They're guardians, just like we were. Were? Elena asked. Jake looked at her with his new silver eyes. We had to go into hiding because of a great danger, something that threatened all life in the galaxy. We scattered ourselves among the younger species and went to sleep, waiting for the right time to wake up. What kind of danger? Elena asked Dot before Jake could answer. The station's communication system activated. A voice spoke in a language that sounded like music. Zarakai, the voice said, we have been waiting for you to wake up. Who is that? Vexther demanded. Other architects, Jake said, hidden throughout the galaxy. My awakening has sent out a signal. They're all starting to remember who they are. The voice spoke again. The Devourers are coming. Our long sleep is over. It is time to protect the galaxy once more. Elena's scanner was beeping frantically. Jake, I'm picking up massive energy signatures all over the galaxy. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. My people, Jake said, coming out of hiding after so long. Commander Vexther was looking scared now. His entire worldview was falling apart. The Zephyrians had thought they were the most powerful species in the galaxy, but they had been living in someone else's house the whole time. What do you want? Vexther asked. Nothing from you, Jake said. You can keep living here if you want, but you can't keep prisoners anymore. You can't hurt people for fun. And you definitely can't keep the Drakmors locked up. Jake walked over to the wall and put his hand on it. The metal began to change shape, creating a large opening. Fresh air flowed in from outside. Kairos Naya Farron, Jake said. You're free. The three dragons looked at the opening, then at Jake. They made questioning sounds. Go, Jake said. Fly among the stars again. But if you want to stay and help me, you're welcome to. Kairos nuzzled Jake's shoulder and made a sound that clearly meant yes. The other two dragons agreed. You're making a mistake, Vexther said. The Zephyrian Empire won't accept this. We'll fight you. Jake looked at the alien commander with sadness in his silver eyes. Commander, your empire is 2,000 years old. That's very impressive for a young species. But we've been watching over the galaxy for millions of years. We've seen empires rise and fall like waves on a beach. You're threatening us, Vexther said. No, Jake replied. I'm offering you a choice. You can keep being bullies and conquerors, and eventually you'll destroy yourselves like so many others have. Or you can join us in protecting the galaxy from the real threats. What threats? Vexther asked. Jake pointed up at the stars visible through the opening in the wall. The Devourers. They consume entire star systems. They turn living worlds into dead rocks. They're coming back, and this time we need every species working together to stop them. Elena was recording everything on her scanner. This is incredible. First contact with an advanced species. The discovery of an ancient civilization. This will change everything. Yes, Jake said, it will. The question is whether it changes for the better or for the worse. A new sound filled the air. It was the sound of engines. Looking through the opening, they could see a small fleet of ships approaching the station. Human ships, Elena said, reading her scanner. That's the rescue fleet I called for. Jake smiled. Captain Lisa Hayes. She's been looking for me. You knew she was coming? Elena asked. I can feel her, Jake said. She's special. Like me. She just doesn't know it yet. The transformation was almost complete now. Jake looked like a being of light in the shape of a man. But his smile was still the same smile that had comforted the dragons in their dark prison. Commander Vexther, Jake said. What will you choose? Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of her rescue ship looking at the massive Zephyrian station through the front window. She had been Jake's co-pilot for 3 years, and when he disappeared, she had spent weeks searching for him. Now she was here with 5 other human ships, ready to fight if necessary. "Captain," her communications officer said, "we're getting a signal from the station. It's Jake's voice, but something's different about it. Put him through," Lisa said. "Lisa." Jake's voice came through the speakers, but it sounded like music. "It's good to hear from you, but stay back for now. Things are complicated here. Jake, are you hurt? We're ready to get you out of there." "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. But I need to finish something first." Lisa looked at the station. Again, it was glowing now, covered in lights that formed beautiful patterns. It looked less like a military base and more like a work of art. "Jake, what's happening over there?" "I'm coming home, Lisa. We all are." Inside the station, Jake was standing in the dragon pit with Commander Vexther and his guards. The Zephyrian commander was staring at Jake with a mixture of fear and wonder. "You could destroy us all," Vexther said quietly. "With this power, you could wipe out the Zephyrian Empire." "I could," Jake agreed, "but I won't. That's not what architects do. We protect life. We don't destroy it." "Even after what we did to you? Even after we threw you to the dragons to die?" Jake looked at Kairos, who was standing beside him like a faithful friend. "You didn't throw me to the dragons. You gave me back my family. Double quotes. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was still recording everything. Her scanner showed energy readings that were off the charts. The station was transforming around them, becoming something beautiful and alive. "Jake," Elena said, "what happens now?" "Now we begin again," Jake said. "The architects are waking up all over the galaxy. We're taking back our role as guardians. But we can't do it alone. We need the younger species to help us." Vexther was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He knelt down on one knee. "I have been proud and foolish," he said. "My people have been cruel because we thought we were strong. But we are children compared to you. If you will have us, we want to help." Jake walked over to the kneeling alien and put his hand on Vexther's shoulder. "Everyone deserves a chance to be better than they were. The Zephyrians can be great protectors if they choose to be." "We choose," Vexther said. "I speak for my people. We choose to serve." Jake helped him stand up. "Not serve. Work with us, partners." The walls of the station continued to change. Prison cells became comfortable rooms. Weapon bays became gardens. The entire structure was becoming a place of peace instead of war. "Captain Hayes," Jake said into his communicator, "you can dock now. I want you to see something amazing." An hour later, Lisa Hayes walked into what had once been the dragon pit. She stopped and stared at Jake, hardly recognizing him. He was taller, and his skin glowed with soft light. His eyes were silver instead of blue. But when he smiled, she knew it was still her old friend. "Jake," she said uncertainly. "It's me, Lisa. I'm just more me than I was before." Lisa looked around the room. The 3 dragons were resting peacefully in one corner. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was studying readings on her scanner. Commander Vexther was talking quietly with his guards. "What happened here?" Lisa asked. "I remembered who I really am," Jake said. "And I remembered our mission." "Our mission?" Jake walked over to her and took her hands. As soon as he touched her, Lisa felt something change inside her. Memories that weren't hers began to surface. Images of stars and planets and civilizations beyond counting. "Lisa, you're like me," Jake said gently. "You're an architect, too. You've been sleeping, just like I was." Lisa's eyes began to glow with a soft blue light. Her hair started to float as if she was underwater. The transformation was beginning. "I remember," she whispered. "I remember the great ships, the floating cities, the garden worlds we created. And you remember why we had to hide," Jake said. Lisa nodded. "The Devourers. They're coming back." "How long do we have?" Elena asked, overhearing them. Jake looked up at the stars through the station's new windows. "Not long, maybe a year, maybe less." "Then we have work to do," Vexter said. "How do we prepare?" "We unite the galaxy," Jake said. "Every species, every world, every ship. We work together like we never have before." Over the following days, the station became a hub of activity. Ships arrived from all over the galaxy. Not just human and Zephyrian ships, but vessels from dozens of different species. Word was spreading that the architects had returned. Jake established a new council with representatives from every species. They called it the Galactic Alliance. Commander Vexter became the first Zephyrian ambassador. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was put in charge of scientific research. Captain Lisa Hayes led the fleet coordination. The three dragons became symbols of the new alliance. Kairos, Naya, and Theron were no longer prisoners. They were guardians again, protecting the station and everyone in it. Other dragons from around the galaxy began to arrive, awakening from their own long captivity. As the weeks passed, more architects revealed themselves. They had been hiding as humans, Zephyrians, and members of 100 other species. Each one brought knowledge and power that had been sleeping for millions of years, but they also brought warnings. The Devourers were closer than anyone had thought. Deep space sensors were detecting massive shapes moving between the stars. Entire star systems were going dark. "We need to be ready," Jake told the council. "The Devourers aren't just hungry. They're intelligent. They learn from each attack. They adapt." "What do they want?" asked Ambassador Chun, representing the human. "Colonies. Everything," Lisa said. "They want to consume all life in the galaxy. They turn living worlds into energy and use it to create more of themselves." "How do we fight something like that?" Ambassador Chun asked. "Together," Jake said. "The same way we did millions of years ago. But this time, we have help from all the younger species. You've developed technologies and ideas that we never thought of." The alliance grew stronger every day. Scientists from different worlds worked together to create new weapons and defenses. Military leaders shared strategies and tactics. Even the dragons contributed, teaching old combat techniques that had been forgotten. Jake stood on the observation deck of the station, watching his ships from across the galaxy practiced battle formations. The three dragons were with him, as they always were now. Kairos nuzzled his shoulder affectionately. "Are we ready?" Elena asked, joining him at the window. "No," Jake said honestly. "We'll never be completely ready. The Devourers are beyond anything most species have ever faced, but we're as ready as we can be. What if we lose?" Elena asked. Jake looked at her with his silver eyes. "Then at least we'll lose fighting together. That's better than being picked off one world at a time." A new alarm sounded throughout the station. It wasn't the harsh warning sound they used for emergencies. This was different, musical and urgent at the same time. "They're here," Lisa's voice came over the communication system. Long-range sensors show Devourer ships entering the outer system. Estimated arrival time, 6 hours. Jake felt a mixture of fear and determination. This was what they had been preparing for. The final test of whether the galaxy's species could truly work together. "Send the signal," he told Elena. "Tell every ship, every world, every species in the Alliance. The time has come." Across the galaxy, the message went out. On 1,000 worlds, beings of every shape and size looked up at the stars. Human farmers on distant colonies. Zephyrian warriors on their home world. the proud bird-like Skyrans in their cloud cities, the deep-sea-dwelling Aquarians in their ocean worlds. All of them knew that their fate would be decided in the next few hours. Jake walked to the station's command center. The room was filled with beings from dozens of species, all working together. He took his place at the central console, with Lisa on his right and Vexler on his left. "Status report," Jake said. 1,500 ships are in position, reported. Admiral Brooks, the human fleet commander. The Zephyrian battle fleet is ready. The Skyran aerial units are standing by. Dragon squadrons are in formation, added Kairos, speaking through the station's translation system. Jake nodded. Then let's show the Devourers what happens when a galaxy stands united. The battle that followed would be remembered for millennia, not just because it decided the fate of all life in the galaxy, but because it proved that different species could fight as one. Humans and Zephyrians flew wing to wing. Dragons carried Skyran pilots into battle. Aquarian ships rose from ocean worlds to join the fight. When the first Devourer ship appeared on the edge of the system, it was met not by scattered, frightened civilizations, but by a united galaxy that refused to surrender. Jake stood at the command center, coordinating the battle with his fellow architects. But he was no longer the scared cargo pilot who had been thrown into a dragon pit. He was Zarek High, guardian of the 7th sector, protector of life, defender of hope. And he was not alone. The 3 dragons who had once been prisoners were now his closest companions. The alien commander who had tried to kill him was now his trusted ally. The galaxy that had once been divided was now united in purpose. As the battle raged among the stars, Jake knew that whatever happened, they had already won something important. TH.